All right, welcome to another edition of the Leo G Show. I am Leo G and podcasting is what I do, man. We got a special show tonight. Should be fun. It's gonna be packed. Sports talk specifically. Gonna talk some NFL draft. Gonna talk some Atlanta Braves baseball, man. So I got some special guests in the house. I introduce them in just a minute, but I gotta introduce my co-host that rides with me all the time. My man Banks over there. What's going on, Banks?
What's going on, Leo G? How you feeling, sir?
Man, I am feeling good, feeling great, man. Got a good show tonight, man. Got a couple of good topics to talk about tonight, man. It should be a good show, man. Got some great guests in, man. We're gonna talk about some draft, some Braves baseball tonight, man. So I'm feeling good, man. Ready to roll, ready to do this thing, man. You ready to do it?
Let's do it. Let's do it.
Okay, absolutely, man. So look, my man Derek he couldn't get in, and he's gonna make it on the next go round, man. So definitely shout out to my man Derek. He'll be on for the next show, man. So before we get into it, man, I got two special guests tonight that I want to introduce tonight on the LG show. I'm very I'm pumped and excited to have them. My first guest, man, is none other than my man Robert Stoneman. I've known him for a minute on the sports scene, and he was really pumped from Atlanta sports scene to talk some Braves baseball, man. As the Braves are currently about to start up tonight. What's going on, Robert?
Oh, doing great, man. Yeah, excited to be here. It's an exciting time of year for sports. The draft, early baseball, so much going on. But thanks for having me.
Absolutely, man. Absolutely. I'm glad you were able to get in, man. Hopefully we'll get you in on some more, man. So another special guest tonight. I'm so proud to have one of my family. My man Walter Still is joining us tonight for the show to talk some NFL draft and to give us a little insight player and what happens during the whole draft process, man. So he'll give us a little insight as to how that goes and kind of went NFL prospects this past weekend, man. Walter, glad to have you, man. I'm glad that you're able to join us tonight.
Leo G, my brother. Hey, thanks for having me on, man. Very excited about it. Long time coming. Rob, great to meet you. Banks, great to see you again. And man, looking forward to tonight's show.
Man, absolutely. We're gonna get into it and start talking about the draft, like I alluded to, man, and definitely we'll get into some Braves baseball here in just a moment, fellas. But I wanted to talk about the draft because, and of course, we're all football fans. We watch football. Walter, you're a former NFL player, so of course you'll give us a little insight tonight as to how the draft goes on. But just to give a little background here, Banks, and I know you follow this as well, and Robert, you probably already know this, man. Roughly 70,000 NCAA players, man, in college football, and I think give or take. Only about 350 guys get invited to the NFL Combine. I want to say about 200 got drafted this past weekend, but we're only going to see about 300 of those guys actually make NFL rosters. So, like, I mean, my math is kind of crazy, but it's like, what, maybe about 1.5, 1.6% of guys from the NCAA are going to make the transition to the NFL. And when you think about it, it's crazy. Banks, people to go from playing college football to the NFL. That's crazy when you think about it, right? 1.6 chance.
Yeah, it's crazy, man. That's what they say about, man. This is their dream. This is what they live for. With the emotion that comes out with it, once their name is called. If it's not even called, if it's rolling across the screen, that's everything to them, Leo. I mean, that's everything for these guys. They started off at Pop Warner all the way to here and to be a professional. Very special.
Yeah, Robert, will you agree, man? It's kind of crazy, man, when you look at, you just said, starting out at the youth level, and then for those of us that made it to the collegiate level, and then to actually be one of those few people that are selected to the NFL, man. It's crazy how that seems.
Oh, exactly, yeah. And I was looking more into like Troy Anderson, who we picked up. That's an example where definitely at the bottom of that percentile of like people you'd expect to see get to the league. So I was happy to see that. But you're right. There's even for the grade A programs right here in Georgia, there's no guarantee you're going to see the league. But I'm excited to see those faces on draft nights, hear the stories. It's really a fun time to see the validation for all their work. So, but I agree. It's a very case where such a small percentage can push through to that next level.
Absolutely. Every time we have a draft, man. So I'm gonna pass it over the wall to him, man. Ask you a couple of questions because you're very, very familiar with this topic, man. These young men, they just, a lot of these guys, man, they work so hard, like we just talked about, to make it to the NFL to see their dreams come true, man. So, Walt, we know that you were a collegiate football player, man, formerly at Western Michigan and North Carolina A&T. I want to ask you first and foremost, man, all about this process, man. How early along did you know, playing collegiately, that you could possibly be drafted, or you might be in the NFL, you might go to the NFL?
Yeah, man. Hey, so for me, when I found out that I possibly had an opportunity to play in the NFL, and Banks kind of alluded to, a lot of guys start playing at Pop Warner. My story was a little bit different. I played 8th grade, broke my wrist the first game, and I ain't play again until my senior year of high school. And I went out as an athlete, and made some plays on special teams, and had an opportunity to play at Western Michigan University. They offered me a scholarship, so I went there, and went in as a tight end. I really did not know how to play football, to be quite frank with you. I was 6'8", ran a 4.5, and I was very coachable. So, I had those things on my side. In Western Michigan at the time, when I got there, they were coming off of 2 back-to-back MAC West championship. They hadn't won the MAC, but they had went to the conference championship games in 99 and 2000. And so, I guess that's what kind of sold me on it. Even though I didn't really know much about college football at all, I was like, okay, well, at least if they're playing in their conference championship game, then that must be a good program, or at least a good indication of a good program. And so we had a couple of guys that came in with me who also made it to the NFL. But one guy in particular who was before me, this guy named Jason Babin, who was a defensive end. He ended up being drafted in the first round. I want to say somewhere around maybe 26, 27, picked to the Houston Texans. And, I played offensive tackle. He played defensive end. So every day at practice, we'd be battling each other. And my head coach at the time, Gary Darnell, said to me, he said, Walter, when the scouts come in and look at Jason Babin, all of them are asking, well, who's the tackle that's playing against him? And so that was really my first indication of, any thoughts of playing in the NFL. Leo, this my last year of eligibility, I transferred to North Carolina A&T. So in 2005, January, I transferred to North Carolina A&T, which is a HBCU down in North Carolina, in Greensboro, North Carolina. And they had a guy who was drafted to the Green Bay Packers in the 5th round in 2005, that January that I got there. Junius Costin was his name. And so the offensive line coach had some experience, had coached a player that had made it, to the NFL. And I was coming in as a transfer to play my last year there. And then throughout the offseason, teams started to come in. And I remember I had a notebook, right? A 3-ring binder that I had, was keeping notes in. And teams started to come in. And every team that came in, I would write the team down on the page that I had, NFL teams that came to visit. And so, throughout the summer, you got summer workouts. First of all, you got spring ball, then you have summer workouts, and then you have training camp. So during training camp is really when the scouts start coming in. And then by the time we started our season, I think 30 teams came to visit North Carolina A&T. So at that point was, when I really knew that I had a chance to play in the NFL.
Hey, man, wow, that's awesome, man. Especially, like you said, transferring your HBCU, to hear you say 30 scouts, come, the guys at HBCUs we talk about. Now, with Jackson State and what Deion has been able to do over there, man, it's starting to become a big thing with the HBCUs. But we, HBCUs sometimes are a little hard sledding, man, to make it to the next athletes and talent there. But like you said, man, to have 30 scouts come on the A&T, it's phenomenal, man. So moving on, man, I want to ask you, we know that, you had the scouts come in and like you said, tape, and a lot of people are asking about you. Once you got into the process of, okay, hey, this might become a reality of me making it to the NFL. Process of people actually coming to you and talking to you about, how about playing in the league and getting to know you as a person. Do you the vetting process actually works when scouts and teams actually approached you, to possibly be a candidate for them to pick, drafting?
Yeah. When those teams were coming in to visit, it was kind of strange because they really wouldn't say much to you, or at least they didn't say much to me. They would just come and look and see you go through drills, and they're looking at, all right, is he really 6'8"? Okay, he's 6'8". Is he 320? Yeah, he's 320. Can he move? He can move. So they're looking for to see if you pass the eye test. And I was fortunate enough my senior year to play in one of the All-Star games, the Hula Bowl. And at the time, the Hula Bowl was like one of the second tier games, like after the Senior Bowl, and then it was the East-West, the Blue-Gray game, and then it was the Hula Bowl that were kind of on equal footing in terms of guys that ended up going pro. So when I went out to Hawaii to play in the Hula Bowl, there were several scouts that were out there, and that's when kind of the interview process started. Teams would come in, they'd ask you questions, and really want to know about your love for the game, how you started playing, your knowledge of the game, and then just really try to get to know you. Scouts, NFL teams have scouting departments that are comprised of, probably about 10 to 12 guys that all cover a region. They got a head scout, and they all report to the director of player personnel. So throughout that process, from the college all-star game, that's when you really are interacting with the teams, right? And again, the college all-star game being the Senior Bowl now, there's the East-West Shrine game. There's a couple other bowl games that are out there. The NFL PA Bowl, where scouts are getting a look at guys, really their last college game, because this is after any conference championships or anything like that, just to play against competition on your level, right? So you're talking about the best guys in the country. When I came out 2006, some notable names for guys that played in the Hula Bowl with me that year. Brandon Marshall, right? He was on my team. He was at Central Florida. Had a great game out there. We also had on the West team, Donald Penn, who played in the NFL for a really long time. He was drafted by Tampa Bay Buccaneers, ended up playing for the Raiders. He's from out west. A couple other guys that, were drafted from the Hula Bowl as well. So when I was coming out, we also didn't have the internet was out there, but it wasn't as prevalent as it is now in terms of like ranking services and like mock drafts and stuff like that. But when I look back, I was ranked probably among like the top 25 tackles in the country. I think I was ranked somewhere between 25 and 30, maybe 26. And then if you look at the draft, right around an average of 25 tackles typically get drafted. So, at that point, I knew I was either going to be drafted in the later rounds or an undrafted free agent. And so, the most interesting part of it was like when agents started reaching out to me on campus. They would, first of all, like, how did you get my number? How did you find me? And they would call and they would, say, hey, can I come down and meet? And of course, I'm like, all right, cool. Come down and meet. And so I had like 4 or 5 agents came down to meet with me. The first agent, this guy named Jeff Jankovic. And what's interesting is that I work in this industry now. I see. I saw Jeff Jankovic at the Combine this year. We were at a conference together, and I had a chance to speak to him. And I thanked him for coming. Because I think he had drove down from like the Virginia area down to A&T and came and met with me at their apartment and, pitched his services to me. I also had one agent to fly me up to Connecticut. Joe Linton flew me up to Connecticut. It was rainy. And at that time, you really don't know what to expect, right? As a player, you going through this process. Knowing what I know now, what I did in Connecticut, I probably wouldn't have done. Because I think at the time he was trying to see what type of speed that I had, right? Because they heard I was fast. That could have went way left. Like I could have pulled a hamstring, could have twisted an ankle. could have done any of that. And again, he not a scout, he not an NFL team. This is somebody who's really trying to see if I am who I say I am, or if I am what the numbers say, to be able to sign me as a client. Then they end up signing with him. And then when I came home to Atlanta, my dad had a relationship with one of the top trainers in the area, Robert Stevens. He trained Takeo Spikes and Carlos Edmonds. He trained Shannon Sharp. He trained a lot of guys. So I was working out with him. Actually had a chance to train with Takeo Spikes prior to my senior year. So he was really one of the first NFL players that I had a relationship with, who was kind of like a mentor of mine. And so my trainer told me he knew about some agents that were in Atlanta. They're Universal Sports now. Kevin, Connor, Robert Brown, those were the agents that I signed with, and they represented me. So, when it was getting time to go, I did not get a combine invite, right? As Leo alluded to, there's, about 300 guys that get invited to the National Scouting Combine in Indianapolis. I was not invited to that. So I was really relying on vertical jump, broad jump, 40 time. And, I was very, very athletic. I was fast. I was strong. I could jump. So athleticism, I would have put myself probably in top 5 rankings in terms of tackles coming out that year. But I didn't go to the combine. And even on my pro day, it was, it wasn't really that as organized as I would have liked it to be. There was a couple of teams that showed up for it. So I did get a chance to work out in front of the scouts and put up numbers. And I also tried to go up to the University of Georgia to work out there because, large universities will sometimes bring in local talent to allow them to participate in their pro days. But because I didn't go to school in Georgia, right, I wasn't qualified. I mean, I went through the process of going up, warming out, and the only thing I did was a vertical. And I think that vertical jump was enough to get scouts' attention. Like, oh, okay, who is this dude that's 6'8", 320, and he jumping to 33, right? So that was the only thing that I was allowed to do at University of Georgia. And then I got shut down after that, which is understandable, right? Rules are rules. You got to follow the rules. And so, that's what happens kind of leading up to the draft. And then before then, teams will call you and have phone interviews. And then some of the top guys, they will bring in for interviews on campus, right? So campus visits and things like that. I didn't take any campus visits. So I kind of just was waiting on pro day at that time.
Man, that sounds like a lot, man, to handle, man. I'm glad you gave us a little, because a lot of people don't know the preparation and what it takes, man, to actually just get started, man, to actually get looked at, man, and to actually go through and start the process of actually trying to make it into the NFL, man, once, immediately, just trying to do all those things, man. We just, okay, hey, man, this kid got drafted, but not looking at, we know about the combine, but we don't necessarily get to see behind the curtain, like you said, with A and the scouts and just going through all of that. So with that being said, a little bit about the Atlanta Falcons and their draft, and I'm going to come back to you, man. So insight as to what these guys probably went through. So I'm going to get Banks and Robert involved, talking a little bit about it. And then you can share to some of the guys that the Falcons drafted if you want to as well. So Banks, I'm going to kick it over. You've been ready to talk a little bit about the draft here. So we're going to talk about round 1, the first night of the NFL draft, talking about our Atlanta Falcons. Some insight from all you guys on this, man, because the first round, I think, is the premier round, right? Average fan, you're going to turn it on NFL Network or ESPN or whatever to do your team pick in the first round. So that's like the big thing, man. Kick it over to you first, man, as we know the Atlanta Falcons in the first round. With that pick, they selected a guy out of USC by the name of Drake London, 6'5". One of the notable things about this guy, man, this is his first year playing collegiate football, man. If I'm not mistaken, I think his first or second year actually playing football. And he gets drafted in the first round by the Atlanta Falcons. 6'5" guy, big frame. As a Falcons fan, Banks, how did you feel about that first pick? I know I felt pretty good. I take that back. At first, I was a little befuddled. We'll talk about that here in a minute. Cause really, a wide receiver. I kind of got on board a little later. So I will say initially, man, I was a little taken aback because I was like, man, can we really afford to waste a pick on a wide receiver? And especially I had a chance to digest and sleep on it a little bit, man. I'm kind of started your opinion on it, man, and tell us how you felt about the first night and watching Atlanta.
Well, I actually went down to Mercedes-Benz Stadium for the draft party, and I was there, and a lot of different feelings around what people wanted. Some people wanted defense, some people wanted Malik Willis. Majority of the people wanted Malik Willis. I kind of was leaning towards pass rush. I wanted the line of scrimmage to be fixed. I still do. When Drake London's name was called, it was silence. And for me, I'm not gonna lie, I was disappointed. I just hung my head. I was like, I was lost for words. I was like, well, another receiver. As like you said, as I slept on it, I thought about it, I watched some more highlights of it and what Arthur Smith is trying to do. It was a red zone move, in my opinion. He's a big frame, so is our tight end, Kyle Pitts. And we picked up I'll get to that later. But I thought it was a goal line decision since our red zone efficiency is near the bottom of the league. So I wanted to put in perspective of why we did it. And at the initial thought, I was really just disappointed. I was really wanting that defensive lineman so bad that I didn't think about anything else. I didn't want to think about anything else. So, but that's the typical fare, right? I mean, that's what we do.
Absolutely. We think we know. We play armchair receiver. We sometimes, man, and we think we know what's best, man. But these guys are locked in and loaded, and they do this full time, 365 days of the year. They know what they need and they know what they're trying to go and trying to get. Robert, man, I'm gonna pass over. You're a fan just like we all are. I know you saw we picked up Drake London. The Falcons picked up wide receiver, man. Did you have some mixed feelings, or how did you feel about the pick when you saw it or when you heard about them picking up Drake London, man?
Yeah, so it's a similar story to what you guys were saying, particularly Banks. I was actually out running errands and I had to turn the radio on to hear it. I missed some of the draft. I tuned in when they were, I think the Giants were getting Thibodeau right before us. And I was texting my friends, of course. I had stopped in the parking lot. I was texting my friends and I was saying, let's get an end, let's get a lineman. And yeah, I hadn't really heard the first 6 picks. So I didn't really even know who was on the board. But yeah, when they got the wide receiver, I was pretty deflated. Obviously, I figured they picked a good one, but it was like flashbacks to 2018 as well, which even when we got Calvin Ridley, it was kind of like, do we really need this? And then obviously that did not work out at all. So kind of the same thing. I was like, do we really need this? This is our top need. But similar to what you both said already, I slept on it, thought about it, looked at the whole picture. And really the ability to get the first wide receiver, to have the pick of the litter when there was 27 wide receivers drafted, 6 in the first round, 7 in the second round. So clearly there's a big pool of highly talented wide receivers, and we got to pick the one that we wanted out of all of that. So I think that's a positive. I mean, if that's where they decided to go, if they picked an end or if they picked even an offensive lineman, they would have been second or third offensive lineman, I think, or second, and would have been the third or fourth end picked. So if you can take the first one, that's pretty good. And I do agree it's a great offensive weapon for the red zone. And I think if you look at the back half of Matt Ryan's career with us, which I think of as the post of the incident in Houston, I think a big flaw was the red zone. We get there in there so much. You get into 20, 25, even 15 field goal maybe. That happens so much. So I think clearly, it's not the same regime, but you should, if that's a problem you have in the past, you should, try to neutralize it in the future. So overall, I'm happy with it looking back and the ability to get the choice of wide receiver that we wanted on this team. So I'll take it as a positive, I think.
Absolutely. I think, at first, everybody, the initial shock of it, like Banks was draft party, and everybody was kind of like, the whole off season. And me kind of joked about this, how we said we needed everything. We going grocery shopping, man, we needed everything, right? So, like, literally, we were going to be happy with, all the picks because we were hurting in every area, especially the wide receiver room, where we knew, like you just said, Calvin Ridley, that didn't work out for us. We also lost Julio Jones. So wide receiver was one of those spots, man, that we knew that we were going to have to add to that room. We just didn't know where, and it ended up having to be the number 8 pick. And like you said, Robert, man, I really like what you said, man. We had, Terry Fontenot said something, man. He said they stuck with the board and they knew what they wanted to do. So it's kind of because they had all the receivers that came number 8 when they got to their board and they saw Drake, they were able to take the game was going to fit with what they wanted to do schematically and what Arthur Smith, obviously with his size, probably one of the biggest things that they looked at and said, hey, we already got 6, and now we bring in another guy that's 6'5", put him in the red zone, and not just the red zone. He could probably, all over the field, man. Make moves. First downs and situations. Banks, I know we always talk about those third down situations where we can't convert. This gives you another option and another body where if our quarterback can get it up to him, man, hey, we can get as we need to convert and keep the drive moving. So, like I said, initially I was in shock. I was just, I guess, in shock that we got a wide receiver. But then once I was able to sleep on it and digest it, I was able to say, okay, hey, you know what? It kind of makes sense. And let's see what they do before in the draft. And Walt, I'm gonna get your insight here, man, and I'm gonna throw it to you here for a second. How this process was, you went through the whole process, man. Kind of give us, I know how you were feeling. Maybe give us a little insight into how I was feeling, man. The first night, because that. I'm not gonna get drafted the first night, man. But if you know that, hey, you're probably gonna get drafted, first night comes on that Thursday night, man. Kind of give us a little insight as to the ups and downs of this roller coaster, man. That we call the NFL draft. I know you talked about it a little bit beforehand, but let's talk about it a little bit now during this process, man. So Thursday night, tuned in, these kids, they're watching as a prospect, man. Tell us how that whole process actually works with someone.
It's very interesting because here you have, probably 300 something guys who are all have the expectation of being drafted, right? So I'm going to get picked up by somebody. And a lot of times your expectations are always higher than reality. And so personally for me, I thought I'd get drafted, towards the end of the draft. But then, when you watch the draft, you sit around. And for me, on draft day, I knew I wasn't going to be a first rounder, but like in the back of your head, you always think like, well, maybe I could be a first rounder, right? Maybe somebody will pick me up, but that's just not the reality of what happened, right? Because you know where you're ranked at the time, and projections are, sometimes they're accurate, but you never know what a team is thinking on draft day. You never know who's going to pick you up in the first round, second round, or even at all. So there's a lot of emotion that guys are planning for draft day, right? There's some guys who get invited to the draft, right? So imagine being a guy that's invited to the draft. You're sitting in the group on the first day on Thursday night. You walk in the red carpet. You sit there. The first round goes by, and your name doesn't get called, right? There were a couple of guys that sat in that room expecting who many people I know expected would be first round draft picks that didn't go. Right. And then you come around, you have the second day, right? You got Friday, you got second round, third round. And again, many guys who feel like, hey, I'm going to be a second or third round guy. And they have parties, they bring their families together, they're fellowshipping, they're having a good time. They got the TVs on, they're listening to the radio, they're looking at Twitter, they're just waiting on that call. And when you don't get that call, it's very disappointing. And then you just try to start thinking like, well, I know somebody's going to want me, right? I know somebody's going to draft me. They draft 4 through 7. And they get up to pick 262, who was famously deemed Mr. Irrelevant in the draft. And then if you don't hear your name called at that point, then you fall off the board, right? And then at that moment, actually, to be quite honest with you, sometimes it's better to, if you are somebody who's late 7th round or, being close to, being an undrafted free agent, it could be better for you to actually go as an undrafted free agent for several reasons. One, there could be multiple options out there. For me, my agent said that the Giants were interested in me as well as the Cleveland Browns. And then at that point, I'm really relying on my agent to make the best decision for me or help me, make the best decision for me and get me in a situation what would be give me the best opportunity to make the team. And so he said, the Browns offered a contract, right? And then there's also two ways for an undrafted free agent to get signed, right? You can get signed immediately after the draft before you show up. In that case, you're a priority undrafted free agent, right? So you sign before you get there. And then you could be a tryout free agent where a team will bring you into rookie minicamp for you to try out during the rookie minicamp, and then with the hopes of signing at that point. So, everybody takes different routes to get to the NFL. But, man, it's really tough. And my heart goes out to guys that, that sit there and wait for their names to get called. Several guys that we can name, some in particular from the University of Georgia, people thought were going in the first round. N'Kobe Dean, right? Wonderful linebacker. I thought for sure he was going to go in the first round. He ended up going in the third, which, still that was a steal, right? So teams end up getting steals when guys fall down the draft board. But from a fan's perspective, we don't always know what went into somebody sliding down the draft board, right? I pay really close attention just by nature of my work to the draft every year. So, I've seen guys who are projected to be first rounders, second rounders, end up going in the 7th round or not even getting drafted at all. So it's tough, right? It's disheartening. It's like anything. Like, you all have things that you expect to happen, goals that you set for yourself. And when it doesn't happen, there's a sense of sometimes your pride, right? Sometimes your sense of pride, your sense of worthiness kind of goes down. But then it could also fuel the fire that you need to make that 53 because now you're coming in with a chip on your shoulder. Right. I started off in Cleveland with the Browns, and I was there during the preseason, and I got released after the 3rd preseason game. And then the Buffalo Bills picked me up right away, and I was backing up Jason Peters. Jason Peters, in my opinion, is a future Hall of Famer. He was undrafted out of the University of Arkansas. And for the greater part of his career, he's considered one of the best left tackles in the league. In fact, I think he's still playing right now for the Bears. But undrafted, right? I think he's a part of undrafted team, and he's still in the league. So, the thing is, it doesn't matter how you get into the league. It doesn't matter how you start. It's how you finish. Because, even, when you look at the statistics of the average career, it's only 3.5 years. So who knows what any of these guys are going to do, right? So I think that even as a fan, when you're looking at your team, your favorite team, you want them to make the best decision based upon the worst part of play for that team the previous year. But again, as GMs, head coaches are looking at bringing in the best player on the board at that time, it may not be in the position that they needed most. It may just be, we got a really good player that we didn't think would fall to this spot, so we will pick him up now.
Absolutely.
And wide receiver is the highest drafted position. Wide receiver and corner, right? Those numbers right there, 28, 29 guys getting drafted each one of those positions every year. It's so many, right? But when you look at some of the top stars in the league, many of them, came in the 3rd, 4th, 5th round, that were considered gems coming out of college, right? Some of the best players at their position, weren't 1st and 2nd rounders. They, came 3rd, 4th, 5th round.
Absolutely, man. Because we have these conversations all the time. People think and expect that, okay, hey, my team needs this, right? So you looking at it as a fan of like, okay, hey, we don't see the big picture. I like to say that. That's the term, the big picture as to what these teams look for when they're trying to draft these players, man. And it's a lot more than just, okay, yeah, we do need guys, but there's scheme, there's the talent aspect of it. what headspace these guys are into the selection process, you know. So I mean, if in our feelings, I fall a victim to that, you know, saying, okay, we should have got this guy, or we should have did this or did that, or whatever. But I have to think to myself sometimes, man, there's a big picture that these guys look. They do it, like I said earlier. This is 365. They eat this all the way up to the GM, you know, player, person, everybody. They know what they're focused on, and they know what they have to do, man. So, you know, it's a big process, man, when you bring these players in and have them fit your team and what you want to do to be successful down the road. So, look, we're going to move a little forward into talking about some of these players drafted, and Walter will get your insight as well as we talk a little bit more about it. Specifically, we're talking about the Atlanta Falcons right now. So, Banks, I'm going to bring it back over to you. So, we're going to kind of talk about these draft picks in chunks for the sake of time, because we do want to move on to our other topic tonight as well. So, had 2 second-round picks, and of course, we talked about them drafting Drake London. We move into the second round on the next day, and the Falcons, that I know you were kind of thrilled with, because it was something as fans that we talked about. Last year, the Falcons only amassed 18 sacks total as a team. Something we know in the NFL, you can't be successful when you only put up collectively as a team, right? You know, TJ Watt for the Pittsburgh Steelers had like 20 plus sacks by himself. You know for a fact that you can't be successful in this league if you can't put pressure on the quarterback and get to the quarterback. So the second round gave us an opportunity to see some great Falcons with great defenders. Hopefully they're pan out to be great. The Falcons were able to pick up. One of the guys was from Penn State by the name of Arnold. I think for short they call him AK Banks.
It's Ebukati.
Ebukati, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Ebukati. So Arnold Ebukati, outside linebacker for Penn State, 6'2", 250 pounds, man. When I looked at him, I kind of looked at some highlights. The first person that I saw when I looked at the highlights for me was Terrell Suggs. I know that's a high ceiling, and I kind of do these guys, but Terrell Suggs was the first person that I kind of saw that came to mind when I looked at him. And I'm saying that's high ceiling. You know, I mean, a very, very great player in the NFL. But when I saw him, I did see some characteristics from Terrell Suggs. Also, the other pick that we got in the second, name of Troy Anderson, inside linebacker from Montana State. I was on social media for the second round. Falcons fans just kind of lost their mind. Walter, you just talked about how he dropped, was a prospective first round pick, and how he was still on the board when the Falcons picked Georgia, but all of a sudden the Atlanta Falcons go with Troy Anderson, this inside linebacker from Montana State. He played in the FCS championship with Montana State. An athlete and jack of all trades, 6'3", 243 pounds. The guy actually played quarterback for Montana State and running back. Applying to do a lot of things, so we know athlete. But a lot of people were saying that he went to and that he didn't play top tier competition. But obviously the fact something in him, and like you said, Walter, man, these scouts go everywhere looking for the best talent, right? And this was a guy that they found be able to contribute to this team, because taking him in the second round means they thought very, very highly of him. So, Banks, I'm going to come to you here, man, to talk about the round. They were defensive picks. How did you feel about the picks that they took up?
Well, start with Mr. Arnold Ebukati, AK. I was thrilled. I watched his highlights, and I watched his get off on the ball on the snap, and I was impressed. But like I said, it's just highlights, and take it for what it is. But for the most part, as the fan in me, the Falcon fan in me, I was excited to see something done for the pass rush. Now, as for the other pick in Troy Anderson, now I'm not gonna lie to you, Leo. No disrespect to the man. he might be a good football player, but I mean, I have no clue for what he is. Nobody on this side of the country was watching anything from Montana State. And you'd be lying if you said you did. Now, I know you said you did watch a championship game, but majority of the masses, I'm pretty sure no one was like, I got to go see this Montana State game and check out this linebacker. No, you didn't do that. So I don't know. It's a big, huge question mark for me for that pick. I'm just going to let that one just put that one on autopilot and just let it go.
All right, cool. Rob, 2 picks that the Falcons were able to pick up in the second round. You got a pass rusher, you got another inside linebacker. Of course, Falcons fans, as we all know, we lost 48 Lewicklin, linebackers. He was a free agent and he went to, get some more money, green to pass down in Jacksonville. So we needed to fill in that spot. Like I said, everywhere we get an inside linebacker with Troy Anderson and we get a pass rusher, man, AK from Penn State. How did you feel about those 2 picks?
Yeah, AK seems like a pretty good pick. I guess I can't dive too deep. For both of them, I'd never heard their names before, last week. But looking at the same thing as Banks at the highlights, I did look at AK was a pretty typical, second round edge rushing linebacker. Happy with it. But yeah, same as everybody else for Troy Anderson. I mean, he seems like a Rudy type, high motor or something. But you look at Montana, he was the best. He was all-state quarterback in high school, defensive player of the year in high school from Montana. Yeah, it's great. But Montana has about as many people as Fulton County, so you have to just kind of take it with a grain of salt. And like you mentioned, really no heavy talent played against them in college. I looked it up and said the hardest team they ever played was the 9-win Washington State Cougars, and then they also played the 4-win Texas Tech Red Raiders one year. Those are the best 2 teams they ever played. So I really don't know what's going to happen to this guy. You got to just trust the man, I guess, and there's no going back now. But yeah, I would have chosen more of top tier schools, maybe more proven talent. But if they want to take a reach, I think it's those things. If you're going to reach that deep, you got to know what you're doing, and if you're not, we're going to notice it, and it's going to bite you, and you'll just lose fan support quicker at the end of the day, really. But you got to trust them. I mean, they're professionals at that point. So all I can really judge is what they picked, and I think, inside linebacker, outside linebacker, perfect choices for second round for this team.
Absolutely. Like I said, I was thrilled they got some defensive help, man. I know, me, defensive coordinator, Dean Pease, right, was probably smiling for me. We know, like I just said, man, not just the sacks, man, but we gave up a lot, and we know we needed to get stronger on defense. He's been a player of the game and a fan of the game of wanting to have a very man. Call me old school, man, but I still feel like defense wins championships, right? Offense sells tickets, and offense, is exciting. You defense, man. And Walter, I get your opinion on that here in just a minute as I go through a couple of these other picks with the Falcons. As we and the top, because you're an offensive player, so I want to get your take on offensive philosophy. So I'll come back to you here in just a moment. But Rob, I'm gonna come to you really. My man Derek Cole isn't here, so I guess the shot thing is out tonight. But so Rob, man, I'm gonna go through these next couple of picks, and there's one very intriguing pick that at Banks, he went ahead and took the shot for us. So yeah, there we go. So I'm gonna go through the last picks. Like I said, we're gonna do them in chunks, man, for the sake of time, so we can go on to our next topic. So we had 2 third round picks, Rob. We had a very intriguing, like you said, Robert, man, this is the Ryan era here for Atlanta Falcons, man. Matt Ryan no longer a Falcon. He's been here for 14 years. Can you imagine a lot of people out here right now? A lot of kids. That's the only quarterback they've ever known for the Atlanta Falcons is Matt Ryan, man. He's no longer a Falcon now. He's in Indiana with the Colts. Excuse me. He's with the Colts now. We knew that, go somewhere with the quarterback position. We end up signing Marcus Mariota, obviously as a free agent to come in and kind of bridge that gap. Long term, Marcus Mariota wasn't going to be our guy moving forward as a franchise guy. We kind of looked at it that way. We knew we needed a quarterback. So Mariota, even though Mariota's a young kid, he's still 28 years old. still fresh in his NFL career, but I don't think any of he was going to answer quarterback. I don't want to go into the particulars as to what happened prior to that, because there was another quarterback that the Falcons were trying to pursue, but that failed. But we're here now with Marcus Mariota, and in the Falcons actually drafted a guy by the name of Desmond Ridder, quarterback out of Cincinnati, 6'3". And we'll talk about that in just a minute. I want to get through the other picks here before we collectively, Rob. Desmond Ridder was the most intriguing pick, though, in the third round. So we had an Atlanta native that was drafted in the third round, an outside line from Western Kentucky, and Atlanta native D'Angelo Malone, another pass rush. We didn't have a fourth-round pick. We moved into the fifth round. To this kid's name, but we ended up picking a running back, Tyler Allegri. Somebody will probably tear me up on Twitter. Algier. Okay, I'm get names. Running back, BYU, 5'10", 224 pounds, man. For the Cougars, man, rushed over 1,600 yards in 2021. Also, we had a guy. So here's a funny thing, a funny spiel. Social media Falcons fans, people here in Georgia, Falcons never draft UGA players. We know UGA was the national champion. Falcons hadn't drafted a UGA player. All of a sudden now, the offensive lineman out of UGA. So we get a guy from the UGA finally, because I know social media, man, by that second, especially with the whole Nakobe Dean situation, we never drafted UGA players, but we got one in the offensive lineman, and then we doubled down on another UGA out of UGA, John Fitzpatrick, 6'7", 250-pound tight end. Babin is going to play the wide technique at tight end, more or less block. He's a big guy, and he does have some good hands, man. Rounding out. So, Robert, I know I kind of compacted all of those picks here, man, in a chunk. Collectively, man, the back end of the draft, man, can you tell me how do you feel a little bit about what they were able to do picking up for need and some of the talent that you saw? Intriguing pick in the third round with Desmond Ridder.
Yeah, certainly. Yeah, I love the Desmond Ridder pick. I remember yelling at my radio, some sports talk, talking about they shouldn't draft a quarterback this year. To say that they should draft a quarterback if the value was there. And I think it ended up being there perfectly because, third round, I think it was, late third round? Yeah, or I don't know. Third round. But I think certainly there's a value to take that risk for Desmond Ridder. Proven winner, obviously. He played against UGA, Alabama, Ohio State. He beat Notre Dame. He's played in NFL stadiums, 70,000 people. So all of that's kind of proven that he can perform under those situations. Obviously, he's got some negatives, or he would have gone, top 5. But I've read about some errant passes. I've seen him play. Obviously, he didn't beat UGA, Alabama, or Ohio State. But I think if you don't have a quarterback that can win 3 playoff games, then you really aren't going to go anywhere. So what's the point of anything else that you do? Is my kind of overall feeling. So you should keep taking that risk until you find the person that can do that. And it could be Marcus. I mean, it's not impossible. Like you said, he's still fairly young and he's still learning. Presumably, I think he won a playoff game, or he came into a playoff game they won. I know that. I know he's been in the playoffs a few times, so that could happen. But I think that they needed to take this risk, and I'm glad it worked out to have some of that quality. But you can see that still he wasn't that important because they picked him after Troy Anderson, 30 picks after Troy Anderson. So he wasn't that important to him. But I'm really glad they took the risk. And then the other ones, can't really speak to D'Angelo Malone, but yeah, I really like that they got somebody out of Ellenwood. And Justin Schaefer, obviously, also from Ellenwood. I think they went to high school together, I read. So that's really cool to get them in there. And John Fitzpatrick, too, from Marist. I think it's got to be exciting to be a hometown player. Maybe you wanted to go off to California and sell your oats or whatever, who knows. But it's still got to be fun to be nearby and to have all your friends and family watch you. And you can always move on one day if you want to do something else. But for the first couple of years, I'm really excited to have them here in town. To see them grow, I agree they didn't really draft a lot of dogs in the past. So that was interesting that they find that in the end. And I think they got the right needs. I mean, they didn't do a lot for the O-line this draft. I think that's the weakest point overall. And but it's not like I think looking at it, if you really look at it kind of individually, there wasn't really a lot of great opportunities for linemen, and they took the more valuable picks in those first 2 rounds. And so you wait till the 6th round to get a guard, and I think it's a good pickup, but I think they could have done a little better. Maybe that's going to be free agency or draft next year to keep reinforcing that kind of weak point. But overall, I was happy with each of those picks. I think they got the right value for where it was. And like I said, except for D'Angelo Malone, I was kind of familiar with the other ones. But overall, I think it was positive. I'm glad they took that value pick with Desmond Ridder, and I really hope it works out. I mean, that he's got a high ceiling, I feel like, even with his little bit of issues with control and direction a few times a game. I think that's something he could work out potentially. But he's got the rest of the intangibles, so I'm really excited to see what he does next couple of years. That's my take.
Absolutely, man. I feel the same way that you do, man. I think these guys have high ceiling. All of them do. So, Banks, I'm gonna pass it over to you, man. Like I said, man, kind of an intriguing pick with Desmond Ridder, and guys have some high ceilings to come in and be productive. Rob, I want to kind of piggyback on what you said. Look, getting him in the fifth round, man. We know that offensive line is kind of shaky. That was one, like you said, man. You hit it on the head, man. We did need some more help in the offensive line, and him coming, even though he was picking the fifth round, we have now. I think this kid could come in and compete and could be a starter. Some of the holes we got on the offensive line, man. So I'm excited about that. They got some pedigree is good. Went to UGA, played against some top. This could be a kid to watch, possibly move his way into the starting lineup, man. Anything's possible with that offensive line. We had some news today concerning the offensive line, but we'll talk about that at a later date and come back to it. Thanks. I want to get your take on it, man, before you and get in with Walter on what's next after the draft. Tell us how the picks that we got here in the third round and into the later rounds.
Well, just to piggyback with what Rob was saying about Justin Schaefer and D'Angelo Malone, they're actually first cousins. They went to the same school. They are blood cousins, first cousins. So that's interesting. I don't know if the Falcons did that on purpose, but that's interesting. As for Desmond Ridder, I figured this was the draft that we were going to evaluate pro quarterback. I didn't know we were going to actually do it, but I mean, he's here, so I mean, let's see what he can do. He can come in and compete for a spot in the future. Hopefully, if he gets it, he keep it. I mean, you got him in the third round. It's not like he's obligated to play. I mean, he can sit back and watch Mariota, and if he doesn't pan out, we can move on to the next. It won't really be hard, As for the rest of them, I'm not really too familiar with D'Angelo. I didn't even watch none of his highlights. Shame on me. As for the running back from BYU, he had the most touchdowns in any running back in college, I believe. That's correct. Yeah. Okay, well, that's something right there. So, I'm kind of excited for him. I see that we waived one of our running backs on our roster today, so that's even more important. So for as a whole, I'm hopeful, and let's see what we go from.
Absolutely, man. Like I said, really kick it over to you here in just a minute, man. And get your take on it. I want your thoughts on the draft, obviously, and then to show what's next for these young men. I know you talked a little agent process, but the next step in these guys' career, because we all know, like you talked about, getting drafted is one thing, man, but then now we is actually trying, because some of these guys are going to compete just to be on the roster. So I want to get your Atlanta Falcons draft class, and then now what it is take for these guys to stay and be professionals, right?
Yeah, absolutely, man. I just want to, Robert and Banks, y'all both noted that D'Angelo Malone and Justin Schaefer, they're local, they're from Atlanta, they're cousins. They're also winners, man. They went to Cedar Grove High School, and they won a championship. They won a state championship at Cedar Grove, so they know how to win. Hats off to Jermaine Smith and what he's doing over there at Cedar Grove, producing a lot of athletes. When I was in the NFL, after my rookie year, I actually had a camp. And during that time, there was this big east side, west side kind of beef thing going on. So I had Washington as well as Cedar Grove High School come over to Washington High School for a 4-day camp which was really good. So it's good to see those guys come out. Justin Safer's offensive line coach at Cedar Grove was Lawrence Smith, who also played in the NFL and went to Washington High School and is from Atlanta. So, just real happy for what those guys are going to do. Desmond Ridder clearly is a competitor. He knows how to win. And so they have I think they were all good picks, right? They all going to get a shot. And, the interesting thing about, being in the NFL and the way that systematically, you have to replace 25% of the league every year. It's like music. It's like playing musical chairs, right? So you draft all these rookies that come in, and then you sign undrafted free agents to come into camp. And then you'll bring in maybe first or second year guys that don't have much experience. So the next step in the process for all the draft picks and the young rookies, maybe guys that have 1 or 2 years of experience on the practice squad roster, is the rookie minicamp, right? And so rookie minicamps for the teams the NFL has it slated where there's like a first weekend, but a lot of those are going to start this weekend, right, on the 5th. So we got teams that will be starting up this weekend. The Commanders are starting up, of course. They got a lot going on. The Ravens are starting up this weekend. The Seahawks are starting up. The Falcons are slated for the second weekend, and the dates to be determined. But again, the first weekend this weekend, other rookie minicamp starting the 13th through the 15th. And that'll just be rookies and guys that have, less than 2 years of experience. So they'll come in and compete. All those rookies that are coming in as a tryout guy, competing in this rookie minicamp to make the team. And so, when I reflect and look back on kind of my experience in going up to Cleveland as a rookie free agent, I came in and they had a couple of tackles that they had drafted. One guy from Virginia Tech the year before. They also brought in a tackle from Florida who, was, eye to eye with me. And that's when you get to the league, you realize, oh, everybody's good. You ain't the only one out here, that's 6'8", 320. But, what makes it real is when you see that first person get cut. When you see somebody get called by, as they call it, the Grand Reaper, and they telling you to grab your playbook and go upstairs and see the head coach. That's when it gets real. Again, that's the musical chairs. Because think about it, guys. Every NFL team, they have a full team before the draft, right? They got a full team. Whether guys have, free agency creates a shuffle where guys are going to new teams and signing new deals. But, they ready to go, especially teams that play deep into the playoffs. Like the Rams, they have a championship team already, but still they have an opportunity to bring in some more guys to compete against guys that are already there, right? And again, it's just like musical chairs. Everybody comes in, they start off with the 90-man roster, but they got to get down to 53. So, after you had a rookie mini camp, then teams kind of go into off-season training where they're training together. Playbook, they're really getting acclimated. Then the veterans come in for a veteran mini camp. Then they got a series of OTAs, and then another mini camp before they take a break before coming into camp in August, late July, early August. So, that's what's on their agenda. But right now, these rookies are just getting ready to go to their teams. And many times when they leave, if they going in on the 5th, they'll be there all the way up through after that last mini camp at the end of July. And then they'll get a break at the end of June, then they'll get a break, a little bit of a break in July, and then come back for training camp to kick it off and get started, get ready for the preseason. So at this point, they're all excited, but, they're getting their hands on the playbook and trying to learn the plays because they're competing. And all the guys that I talk to that are going to team, I'm encouraging them and I'm telling them, like, there's no such thing as, fighting for a backup roster spot, right? Either you going in and the goal is to start or you're expendable, right? That's it. Either you the first man up or you the first man out. And that's it. That's how it goes in the NFL, first man up or first man out. So they're competing. Rookie minicamp will be interesting. They'll get a chance to come in with guys that are pretty much on their same level and some guys that may be in their second year or 3rd year in terms of being in the NFL, whether they were on practice roster sign from the CFL or, guys coming in from other leagues. With that rarely happens. That's few and far between. But again, they're going to be competing. It's all about competition and knowing that when you look around in that locker room, if they're bringing in 90 guys, 100 guys, those guys aren't going to be on the team. They're going to be gone.
Wow.
Right? So, and even draft picks, 6, 7 round picks, you're expendable. You come in, even though when you're drafted and, you're guaranteed a signing bonus based upon where you're drafted and where you're slotted. And it goes anywhere $5 million first pick in the first round, all the way down to about $100,000 in the 7th round, which is guaranteed. But a team can still cut you. That just lets you know, how deep their pockets are, where they can draft a guy in the 6th round and still release him. Now, given that guy may end up on the practice roster or getting signed with another team or going on to the wire, but hey, they all got a chance to compete. And as a Falcons fan, I hope they all do well because I want our home team to win. And I want these guys to be successful. But, the NFL, looking at the average 3.5 years, you really got to take it for what it's worth and think about what you're going to do next and use the platform of the NFL to help propel you to what you're going to do after you're done playing football.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Walter, we'll definitely try to bring you back of it as well, man. So look, man, we're going to move into the next segment. Walt, around for just a second as we're going to talk some Braves baseball here in just a minute, man. But I appreciate you coming out, giving us some insight, man. We'll definitely have you back on here to talk about after football, man, and kind of get how you work with these and help them transition on the other side of them after they play professional football, man. So I definitely appreciate you with that. And stick around, man, because I know you're a Braves fan too, man.
Yeah.
Into this as well. So look, guys, hey, we talked about the NFL, a little bit about Braves baseball now that we just jumped into the earlier part of the season and talk about our World Series champion Braves here, man. A lot to talk about. As we speak right now, man, Braves are playing first place. I don't put into this. New York Mets. I'm looking at the score right now. It's 2-0 New York. Looks like we're just in the 3rd inning, man. Rob, I'm gonna take it over to you first. Braves are right now fighting to get to 500, man. They just lost a series here in a very good team, man. 2-3 out there in Dallas against the Rangers, man. First thing first, Robert, man, is it time to panic? I mean, there's a couple other things we want to talk about, man, but I've been hearing as we winning the championship, people are starting to panic this early. I mean, what's the deal, man? Is it time to panic this early, man?
No, not time to panic at all. I think, baseball fans know what a huge grind it is. I mean, the leaves will be falling. That just came out by the time we settled who's going to play in the playoffs. But I think it's time to stop the party. I think it's time to focus on 2022. I think that, I'm not on the team, but it's got to weigh on them to be the champions. The rings are heavy, right? Even metaphorically, when you're out there in the field. So I think it's time to move past those great, first 2 weeks of celebration we had, and really just time to focus on winning. I don't see any reason to panic. I mean, the Mets are really peaking right now, as we talked about. I mean, they could sustain it, but they never have in the past decade anyway, except for that one good run they had. But they're leading the division, looks like, in runs scored. They're leading the division in runs against, and the lowest runs against. They've got the most quality starts. They've got, obviously the most wins. So it'll even out. And really, to me, the same predictions from the preseason that anybody would make probably still hold firm. And we've only played 23 games, of what's that, like 17% of the season.
Quarter, yeah. We're not even a quarter in.
So
it's funny, man.
Yeah, I just didn't like the energy I saw this weekend.
I'm sorry.
I don't like the energy I saw this weekend in Texas. I think they had they had good energy against Florida, I felt like, or Miami. Now, when I was watching those games, the Cubs, they obviously won that series, but I feel like it's like a lot of the things. I'd like to kind of see the quality and the attempts kind of fading. I feel like the whole weekend was kind of lackluster. The pitching did well. That Ricky Elder did well, but I just didn't think the bats were trying. So that's the whole thing. Stop the party. Let's focus on winning. But this is the same way they acted last year, right? We all remember they basically just stayed right here until August 15th or whatever, and then they decided to turn it on. which worked real well, but I don't think it's going to work again. I think last year was a bit of an aberration. The NL East, the Phillies and the Mets really fell off, and I don't think they're not going to do that again. We're going to have to battle one of them. I think we're going to have to battle the Phillies eventually, because I just feel like the Mets will always do what the Mets do. But yeah, I'm not panicking, but right now I wouldn't put my mortgage on the Braves to win the East. But I think they can absolutely do it if they can, focus. That's my general take on them. Yeah, I want to see a little more energy. I want to go back and look what they're doing tonight. They're already down 2-0, like you said. So kind of upsetting to see after a lackluster weekend, but that's baseball.
Absolutely. Banks, man, I know you have a really invested stake in this, man, as well, watching the Braves, man, early on, like Rob just said, man, still not even a quarter of a way through the season. A lot of fans are in panic mode already. In the World Champions, man. Lackluster weekend, like I said, coming off that series with the Cubs and the Rangers. Didn't perform very well against weren't very good. So as of right now, we sit at 10-13, like Rob said, man, 19th best record in the MLB. 6 games back of first place with the Mets as we end the series with them tonight. Still a lot of baseball left, like I just said, and only in the third. Banks, do you think? Like I'm gonna ask you, is it time to panic, man? We know we got a lot of baseball left, man, and I know sometimes as fans, man, we get caught up into first impressions. I mean, like Rob said, man, how do you feel about these first 23 games and what we can expect moving forward when we start getting into the dog days of summer and we really have to start grinding it out?
Listen here. It's a carbon copy of last season. Mets started off on fire. If you recall, we opened the season last year against the Phillies where we got swept. I think we came back home and played the Mets eventually, I think a couple of weeks later, and got swept again. Listen, people, this is what the Braves do. Even the year prior to that, they started off slow and they got cooking around by late July, and guess who's in first place at that moment? It was the Mets. So we read this book already. We read it front to back. It's no time to panic. If last year didn't teach you anything, that we came from the depths of hell, pretty much. When we left for dead, our best player tore his ACL. We didn't have pitching, no bullpen. And all of a sudden, come August and September, we running the Phillies down, and here we are talking about why we're not winning, because we're champions. Of course we're champions. This is not a sprint, guys. It's a marathon. It's 162 games in the baseball. I have not known that one team in the history of baseball to win a World Series in April and May. It just don't happen that way. So much happens between now and September and October. Just be patient. If we're talking about this in the end of August and September, then we can start what the hell is going on. But until then, I'm asleep. I'm not worried.
Absolutely, man. Hey, man, and part of what you just said, I'm glad you said that, Banks, and I'll get you guys' opinion on here in just a moment. It's like you said, we lost Ronald Acuna Jr., one of the biggest part on this team last year, tore his ACL. I want to say midway through the season, and he was a big part of what we do offensively in the production. So I'm gonna bounce it back over to you, Rob. This thing out talking about the Braves, and of course, Rob will definitely have you back as the season progresses, so we can look at this and do a comparison once we get maybe middle way through the season. Ronald, right? Well, we know he was good at the league. Man, he was able to get us some production offensively. He did well with the stripers, and that's why they brought him up as fast as they did. Man, I don't think a lot of people up as quickly as they did. How meaningful is this going to be? I don't know what has transpired. I know he's only played a couple of games back here with him, but how important is this going to be offensively to get him to produce and our success moving forward into the rest of the season?
Yeah, I think it's huge, and I'm glad they brought him back early, because I know they were talking about bringing him back around this weekend, but they brought him back about a week early from the original timeline. Yeah, you had Alex Dickerson there. with a 194 on base percentage, 3-1 strikeout ratio to walks. So he was bleeding runs. I mean, he was not helping us whatsoever. I think he could have skipped the batter. He might have done better, but it's great to have Acuna back. And yeah, Banks brought up actually a bit of a bad memory. I remember last year I went out to the kitchen, came back to see Chip Carey telling me that Acuna was down and they were getting the stretcher and stuff. And it was, after that, I think it was probably about a month before I believed in the Braves again. I mean, I think we all remember those days. So yeah, to sit here today and look at the roster we have, I think it's a pretty stout roster. And I really think I'm interested to see, we might not get the full details immediately, but I'm interested to see what the clubhouse is like now with Freddie gone, and if Acuna, who did speak out about Freddie and his relationship with him, if he does try to fill that vacuum, or who does, because at least they made it seem like he was some type of leadership in the clubhouse. I mean, clearly, as a top producer, you would expect him to be that type of leader, especially someone who's like 32 years old. So I wanted to see if Acuna will step up, or who else will step up, or just how the culture will kind of shape up, and hopefully, with the waning of the coronavirus, also we can get some more insight from the reporters inside the clubhouse about those items. But I think offensively on the field, obviously, huge step up from Dickerson, or whatever we were trying to fill the gap with. But I am interested to see how the team gels this year, and especially I think Acuna is a big part of that, and having him back in Atlanta is going to be huge. So I'm going to watch that closely and look and see what our reporters within the clubhouse tell us about what goes on there. But I think he'll be a positive there too. He's got a great energy, so I'm excited to see him back.
Absolutely. I think we all are as Braves fans back, man, and glad to see what he could do, man, especially coming leadoff spot, man. I like him, man, that leadoff spot. A lot of people would debate and say, maybe he needs to be playing in the 3-hole or whatever the case may be. But hey, man, we'll see how they works out with Schnitt, man. Banks, I'm gonna pass it over to you, man, to kind of talk about Acuna being back, man, and what that means to the team, man, before we close this thing out. Well, I'm gonna get, as a Braves fan, man, that's how you feel about the team thus far, 23 games. First, man, your thoughts on Acuna being back in his lineup, man, and maybe he can be a spark plug for some offensive production.
Pretty much what you said, it's almost. He came back a little early from his stint from Gwinnett, and instantly you saw a difference in the team, a little more pep in their step. Kind of off topic, Austin Riley hit a solo home run, 2-1 Braves. The Mets. Back to Acuna. I think that's only a good thing for the Braves going forward. I mean, he's pretty much he's a walking spark plug. I mean, I like Ozuna. I like what the other guys bring to the table, but not having Rosario from his eyes.
Eye injury
surgery he's about to have. So you need something back there to bring some kind of a spark to the bats. If you recall back when the trading deadline last season, we brought in Jock Peterson. Jock Peterson not only brought in a fire, he brought in a swag, and he brought in this thing where I'd never seen the Braves been at, probably ever. It took off like wildfire, and the whole team was infected by it. And I believe just by that swag alone propelled the Braves into the championship. I believe Acuna has that same trait of bringing the swag, if you will. We know what he brings to the team, and when he's not there, they're a whole other team without him. So it's a great thing that he's back. And as he gets on, get his feet under him and everything, and we're going into May, then to June, we're going to see a different Braves team. I guarantee you that.
I think so, man. We're going to be hoping, man, going into that All-Star break, man, seeing them kind of on the Mets, like Rob, you just said, man, don't think have a lot of confidence in the Mets, man, holding that thing down in the East, man. So if I'm not mistaken, well, I thought I saw something, but I guess I didn't, man. No. But look, guys, we're going to close this thing out, man.
I saw the same ghost.
I did see the same ghost. I thought I did see that. So, Walter, before we close this thing out, I don't know. Maybe this will happen. Wait a minute. Hold on. Wait a minute. We do see somebody popping up here. We'll get some final thoughts. If it isn't my man, Derek Cole, that's on the show, man. Derek Cole, what's going on? How are you doing, brother?
What's up, my brothers? What's up? What's up?
Hey, man, glad
Hey,
for the show, man. As we about to close this thing out, man. I was just about to here on the Braves, and then I'll give it over to you about your draft in the Braves before we close this thing out, man. So I'm gonna go to Walter, hometown Braves fan, man. How do you feel about the Braves, man? Is it too early to panic, man, or we just gonna sit here and let this thing play out, man?
I definitely think it's too early to panic. One thing to consider is, we did have a lockout, right? And one of the things that came out of the new collective bargaining agreement between the Major League Baseball and the players was expanded playoffs, right? So now we're going from 12. We're going to 12 teams in the playoff as opposed to 10 teams in the past. So that's more opportunity right there. Still so early, right? But three wild card teams from each. So I'm going to keep on chopping for my Braves, and hopefully they can, bring back the Braves of the '90s, where they were, back-to-back appearances in World Series, and we could do it again. So, go Braves.
Absolutely, man. That's what I want to see. I'm glad you said it, man. We were spoiled. It was lovely around here, man. We putting up pennants every year around there. I wish we'd have got more World Series trophies, but still none of the successful team. And that's why Banks always say it's Braves country, man, because a lot of people became Braves fans back in the 90s because of that success and those runs that they had, man. So Derek Cole, man, as you join us, close this thing out, man, I'm gonna get you really quickly. I'm gonna get give us a take on the draft. We talked about the Falcons draft. I want a brief take on that, and also a brief take on the Braves as we close this thing out, man.
all right. Overall, I think the draft was solid. I just had an issue with the first pick being a wide receiver. Other than that, I think picking up 2 rush players was good for us. And my ride with my man Banks on that whole Troy Anderson pick. I'm just gonna have to, ride this one out, because if he's not the next Luke Kuechly in our division, then we're gonna have a serious problem accepting him at round number 2. I'm sorry.
He might be.
You know what I'm saying? He got to be. No, he might not. No, might be. He has to be. There's no might to it. Second round pick, and you went out there to, what is that, Montana State? I'm just saying.
A linebacker right there.
Right, and then Nakobe Dean was still there for the taking. I mean, he's gonna be tied to Nakobe Dean for the rest of his career in Georgia.
Hey,
I'm just saying.
Can I say one thing about Troy? Right, a lot of people don't know Troy because he played out west at Montana, but I had a chance to see him down at the Senior Bowl in Mobile. And so down at the Senior Bowl, they have trackers on all the players. I think it's called the Zebra Tracker, but it tracks your speed, acceleration, burst. And Troy Anderson had one of the top 3 acceleration speeds of all the players there, including over many DBs that were down there. So when you speak about Luke Kuechly and the linebacker that he was, I could definitely see him being that type of player. Especially having experience of being a running back, he knows what to look for, right? Because he played on that side of the ball. So I'm excited to see him play, man. Because again, it's not what school you come from or what conference you play in. If you're a dog, you're a dog, right? If you're a good player, you're gonna be a good player in any level. So I'm excited to see the underdog come through and do his thing, especially knowing the type of acceleration that he has. And you need that. That's one thing that the Falcons have been lacking is, that secondary support on the D-line, whether they're getting pushed on the run, having that second layer behind them to get in front of those guards and tackles pulling around. I think he has the ability to do that. So, we'll see. I'm excited to see. I'm excited to see them all.
Yeah, we're not knocking it. We're just saying we want him to become. He has to be that player. You know what I'm saying?
That guy, right?
Yeah, he has to be that guy.
Speaking it into existence.
We're gonna claim it. We're gonna claim it. We're gonna claim it.
Yeah.
Derek, your thoughts on the Braves here too, brother, as they take on the Mets right now 2-1.
If I'm not mistaken, I think we were in similar position last year. and we ended up being the what World Series champions. Yeah. So everybody calm down a little bit. You know what I'm saying? Everybody understands when you're the champ, everybody's coming at you with both fists caught every game. So we know we got a big target on our back because we are the champions. And until we are not the champions, we are the champions.
Absolutely. Appreciate you, man, giving us a little insight, man. So look, we're gonna close the show out, man. Especially man Robert and also Walter for joining us, man. Special shout out for Derico, man, for jumping in like he did, man, like a ghost, just smooth right on in, man. So before we Robert, I'm gonna give you an opportunity if you want to let people know how they can reach out to you, man. If you interact with people on social media, you can do that at this time.
Well, I don't really do that, but Robert Stowe is my Twitter handle. If you really want to talk to me, I just use it to. I mostly use it to complain to brands that have upset me. But yeah, you can. But yeah, robertstowe.com and Robert Stowe on Twitter. I got both those things. If you really want to talk to me, go for it.
Man, he's knowledgeable, man, about the break. Now you're gonna get that smoke, man. I feel about stuff, so but
I'll talk to people.
That is time, people. Walter, man. Walter, let everybody know where they can find you, man, because you got a lot of stuff going on. So let everybody know how they can find you and let on.
If you want me, you can find me in the A. No, I'm just no, I'm Walter Stith on all platforms. And if you want me, you can find me in the A.
Hey, absolutely. It's that simple, man. For real. In the A. That's what we do, man. Look, you Banks, and then I'll pass it over to you, Derico. Banks, let everybody know where they can find.
First of all, thank you, Mr. Robert. Thank you, Walter, for coming on the show, guys. It was so much a pleasure to be in discussion with you guys. As for me, I'm sorry, Derico. Thank you for sneaking through the back door. That's how you do it. So you can find me at Antoine Jarrell Banks on Facebook and Baby Banks 80 on the Twitter or the ground. And everybody that knows me that says they watched the show and you keep coming up to me and say, I enjoyed it. Hit that subscribe button. I mean, that hit the subscribe button. You know, we appreciate you watching, but just don't be like, when you guys coming on next? Well, if you hit the subscribe button, you're going to have to ask that question because we'll automatically be there. So hit the subscribe button, Leo G Show. Appreciate y'all.
Absolutely. Derico, let them know.
This is great.
Oh, thank you, Rob, coming through. Well, Rob is a man of his word. And y'all don't be fooled now. He sound real soft on this podcast today. That's he's not a gentle giant, but he's my man. I like Rob. And Walter, I appreciate listening to you give that knowledge. Don't think just because I went on, I wasn't paying attention. I was listening, so I was eavesdropping on y'all. So I got those nuggets, and I appreciate your experience in the NFL and bringing that to our podcast. And for me, you can catch me on the Twitter at VSU96 SDD or VSU, that one. Or you can catch me on the gram at Derico_Virgo. And if you're lucky enough, you can find me on Facebook at StacyD.Derico. And like Walter say, you can find me in the L, Loganville.
Yeah, we got to get real specific around these parts, right? We got to get real specific around these parts now. Oh, man. So, guys, like I said, man, wonderful show, man. I appreciate everybody for coming on. Definitely, Robert, Walter, you guys have an open invitation anytime you and talk sports with us, man. It was really, really great to have you guys. You can follow the show on Facebook, of course, the Leo G Show. You can also find us on Twitter. That's the Leo G Show, the #1 on Twitter. You can also find me, my personal account. That's at Southern Set with 2 T's. Bruiser Butcher, and I'm always on Twitter getting smoke from everybody. But it is what it is, man. I love to do this, man. I love Atlanta, and I love talking about sports, man. So this has been another edition of the Leo G Show, man. We're gonna here probably in another week or so, man. And hopefully Derico will be with us for the whole. You guys gotta stay tuned. And like my man Banks said, like and subscribe so you'll know when we had that show on YouTube, man. You'll get that notification, man. So definitely do that, man. This has been another edition. We're gonna be out.
Bye.